It's great to welcome to the program today Hedrick Smith, who's the executive producer of the Democracy Rebellion, where Hedrick travels the country really looking for success stories of democratic reform, which is, what I find interesting about this, Hedrick, is that there's so much negative going on, and it's not about pretending that everything is great, but I think it is important to understand when there are opportunities to make positive change, we want to understand both what they are, but it seems a focus for you also is understanding how they can be replicated elsewhere. Is that a piece of what you're trying to do?
But you got a bundle of things there. First place, I didn't actually go looking for successes. I was traveling the country. I'd written a book called Who Stole the American Dream about how we got the inequality in this country. And people started peppering me at my college lectures and talks with other groups. How are we going to fix this? Is anybody doing anything about it? So I really kind of stumbled into the story, and I began to find that there were people doing something about student debt, about minimum wage, and then they were doing something about gerrymandering and dark money and voter suppression and things like that. And I said, wow, this is a story and it's not being reported. And if you're a good reporter, finding a story that's good and that nobody else is reporting or not doing much about, that's what you want to go after. And I was a foreign correspondent for the New York Times for a long time. Moscow, Cairo, Saigon, Paris. I learned then you can't cover a country by sitting in the Capitol. And that's what our Washington press corps is doing. And one of the reasons is the story is really negative here. It's partisanship, it's gridlock, it's lobbyists taking over Congress, it's corporations capturing the Congress, and people being left out. But if you get out into Colorado or Washington or North Carolina or Florida or South Dakota, of all places, Connecticut, Massachusetts, people are on the move and they're fixing things. And I just thought that's a tremendous story.
A lot of the stories you tell relate to money and politics in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes it's very direct. It's literally about money. Sometimes it's more indirectly related to the influence that one can buy or wield if they have access to money, sometimes hidden money in different ways. Is this the number one theme, in a sense, that what we need to be looking at as a starting point is the way that money flows into politics? Or is there some other theme that you would assign to the stories that you found?
The most important theme is that people power works. There's an enormous dissatisfaction and anger and disenchantment among the American people today with the political system. A sense that Washington and politicians don't listen to people like me, that the big money has captured Congress and the government is working for special interests. And along with that, there's a widespread feeling of powerlessness, of hopelessness. There's nothing we can do about it. They've got all the money. They've got a lock on power. We can't get them out of office. They won't listen to us. And a friend of mine, Ernie Cortez, who's an organizer down in Texas in the Southwest, said to me at one point, you know, Rick, people say power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts, absolutely. He said, but powerlessness also corrupts. It corrupts democracy at the core. But what astonished me was that there is, I don't know, 8%, 10%, 15%, 20% of people out there who say, damn it, I'm going to do something about it. We got to take this on ourselves. That's the main theme. The main theme is that people power does work. I mean, last year, the last election, 2018, was the best year for political reform in this country in half a century. 5 states adopted gerrymander reform. 3 adopted electoral reform. 7 or 8 states made it easier to vote. 4 or 5 big cities adopted public funding of campaigns. Maine adopted rank order voting. There are now 13 states signed on to change the electoral college. So reform is actually springing up all over the place. So that's the main theme. Yes, money is a big deal, but gerrymandering is another big deal. Any way people can get a lock on power, either by manipulating election maps or by using dark money and big money, that's dangerous to democracy, and people are reacting. And that's great.
Yeah, there's been some successes when it comes to gerrymandering. We saw what happened in North Carolina. We saw what happened in Florida. What I'm interested in hearing from you about this is gerrymandering is extraordinarily important and impactful, but for a lot of people who are just, through no fault of their own, they're just busy living their lives. They're trying to put food on the table. They're going to work and doing these things. It's not an issue that as many people are aware of as maybe should be. What was it that you believe took place in the places where they've had successes that created the activism and the awareness of this as an issue? Like, what's the difference maker with regard to getting people engaged and saying, this is an issue we can activate around, let's do it?
Speaking up and doing something about it. In Michigan, a young woman named Katie Fay, 28 years old, posted a post on Facebook. This is back in 2017, posted on Facebook that gerrymandering was going on in Michigan, that the state Republicans in the state legislature had tilted the scales. And so instead of there being a sort of a 50-50 split in the state's legislature and in the state's delegation to Congress, which is about what the popular vote was, there was a real tilt in favor of the Republicans. So she writes this on Facebook. Within a week, she got 5,000 responses. She set up a group called Voters Not Politicians, meaning voters should draw the lines. Voters should decide, not politicians drawing the map. She understood that gerrymandering was stacking the deck, and therefore it was affecting everything else. It was affecting how they voted on minimum wage, on student debt, on immigration, on gun control, everything else. And what happens is usually people focus on their issue, and that's understandable. There are certain issues that really grab people, aggravate them. They want to do something about it. But what Katie Fay and others have understood is that fixing gerrymandering, fixing money in politics, fixing voters' rights is the gateway to the issues that you want to get to. If the system is tilted and stacked in favor of special interests, then no matter how loud you scream, no matter how much you organize, you can't change it. And I think that's a real awareness. I don't know what it is, why they responded. The answer was a whole lot of people in Michigan understood what Katie Fay said. And when she finally lit the match, it struck a spark and there it went. But it's interesting. It wasn't just Michigan. I mean, it happened in Missouri. It happened in Colorado. It happened in Ohio. It happened in Utah. In North Dakota, there's a bunch of 70-year-old women who call themselves listen to this, the badass grandmas of North Dakota. They're 70 years old. There are half a dozen of them. They said, we have a corrupt political system. We got foreign money coming in. We got lobbyists with too much power. We're not limiting contributions. They literally passed a referendum in North Dakota pushed by the badass grandmas. Now, I can't tell you why it took off. I think the answer is there's so much tinder out there. There's so much anger. There's so much frustration with an unfair political system that if the person lights the right match, it takes off. And the answer is it's taken off in state after state. So there's no special magic. I think the key is people hanging in there and people getting over that sense that we're powerless. We can't do it. And I think that's the reason why our movie, The Democracy Rebellion, is really important, because it shows people that in states as different as North Carolina and South Dakota, California and Florida, Connecticut and Washington, people power has worked. It's not just a dream. It's not just what you learned in high school. It's not just civics. It's actually happening. And I think when people see it, they'll say, and the guy says at the end of the documentary, it's a wonderful line, a guy named Jorge Marzulli, who's a Latino organizer in Miami, he says, if we can do it in Florida, you can do it in your state. I think that's the message.
Is there or let me frame it up in a different way. There are different mechanisms through which we can achieve change. So sometimes it's voting for someone different to represent us in a particular, state, Senate, House of Representatives, whatever. There are ballot initiatives that sometimes have been successful at achieving change. There are legal appeals, so filing lawsuits and appealing those up to a high enough level at which a change can be adjudicated. Are different mechanisms more or less appropriate for different goals, or is there one mechanism that you believe is most effective?
No, the more arrows you have in your quiver, the better off you are. The people, for example, in North Carolina, who were working the Moral Monday movement in North Carolina, which was working against a photo ID law that one of the courts said was targeted with surgical precision to affect the voting of African-American voters. Okay. Yes. So they went to court and they filed suit, and eventually they won that court decision. But they also had demonstrations outside the state capitol, Moral Monday. They started out with a dozen or 2 dozen people. They wound up at one point with 80,000 people on one Monday. So they used mass demonstrations both to show the legislators, the lawmakers, that they had to respond to public opinion, but also to mobilize people. And actually that's affected the way elections are starting to go in North Carolina. It mobilized people not just for that issue, but it gave people the idea that if they came out, they could influence the state government. They actually won a governor's election in North Carolina. So that, I mean, the politics of North Carolina have begun to change as a result of the protest movement. So no, there's no silver bullet. There's no one answer. As a matter of fact, the more techniques that are used, the better chance of success a protest movement or a democracy rebellion has than if it just tries one thing.
There are people who will hear our conversation and certainly will agree with the outcomes of many of the stories that are told in the film, but they will no doubt still say, listen, at the national level, when it comes to what we see happening in the White House, we feel helpless. We see that there are checks and balances, but they're being ignored. We see that there has been an impeachment, which even if it were to go to the Senate, would ultimately be an acquittal when it comes to how the Senate would vote, and they feel powerless. What do you say to people who are concerned about, at the national level, what they've felt has been an inability, despite what Donald Trump has done, no matter what it is that has taken place, that they feel as though it's just a matter of either we vote him out in November or we don't, and otherwise we feel like we don't have that much power to affect change?
Well, if you're going to go mountain climbing, you don't start up by going after Everest. You start with a hill in your own neighborhood and you climb it, and then you learn how to climb a bigger hill. I think the answer is, if you're looking at what's going on in the Senate, when you're looking at what's going on in the Congress, those are directly affected by the reforms that are taking place at the state level now. If Donald Trump is defeated in November, the reform movements I'm talking about will have had something to do with mobilizing people and giving them a sense of power. Politics is not a light switch. You can't throw a light switch and say, oh, well, if I go out and demonstrate today, I get whatever it is I want politically tomorrow. You got to build for it. You got to work for it. I mean, Trump's election, whether or not people like it or not, was a mark of enormous dissatisfaction by at least 60 million American people. Not as many as Hillary Clinton got, but they were very unhappy with the party on the other side. You got to acknowledge that. Part of the difficulty is we get so locked into our point of view that we think, well, we're right and the other side's totally wrong and there's no justification there. The answer is you got to go out and persuade people. Well, one way you persuade people is you get involved in a movement. One of the things that has really struck me about this movement is how transpartisan it is. When I go into a Colorado, or I go into a Connecticut, or I go into Florida, I find Republicans, independents, and Democrats all working on it. If I'm in Washington, where I sit and where I live and where I've done my political reporting most of my life, I see just absolute cleavage. I see a Grand Canyon. There used to be an overlap in the parties. The political scientists used to do charts, and they actually plotted the votes of the Democrats in the House and the Republicans in the House, and they overlapped. And today there's a gulf between them. They actually chart the maps and they look different. That's not the case out in the country. So the place where we're going to get the country back is out there. And by the way, that's American history. I mean, the civil rights movement didn't start in Washington. They passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 after years of protest at the grassroots. So if you were sitting at the grassroots, if you were involved in the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955, you had to wait 6, 7, 8, 9 years before it happened. But it did happen, and you had an impact on it. I was in Birmingham. I was in Albany, Georgia. I was in Nashville, Tennessee. I saw the thing build. And what I'm seeing as a reporter today is the same kind of building. It will yield results. It is already yielding results at the state level. The Democracy Rebellion is getting those results. It will lead results to the national level. We saw it with the progressive era a century ago. Women got the right to vote. We got direct election to senators. We've had this kind of period in American history before. It's smart to take heart. It's smart to take inspiration and not to do what Ernie Cortez said, feel powerless because you can't knock the guy off in the way you want at the moment. I understand that frustration, but politics takes time. I mean, it's a little bit like watching grass growing. I mean, if you watch a lawn, you can't see any change. But if you were there in the spring and it was bare ground and you're there in the fall and there's a lawn, you understand something was happening. That's what I think is going on in America today. The grass is growing. The land is fertile. The people are moving. It works. It's amazing. I mean, I have to tell you, as a reporter, who's reported for 5 decades, who's been all over the world. I've reported from 40 countries or so. I'm amazed at what I'm seeing. And as a citizen, I'm really encouraged.
We've been speaking about the film The Democracy Rebellion with the film's executive producer, Hedrick Smith. Hedrick, I really appreciate your time today, and I encourage the audience to absolutely check out the film.
Be great to have people watch it. I think you'll take heart. It'll inspire you.